rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. Oh, I've had an interesting last 24 hours. Oh, boy. Anyway, yeah, please don't get into the fight. I'm really even not interested. Honestly, it's just one of those things where I am, I just laughed. I just laughed because, you know, I mean, okay, here, I got to tell you the story, but I don't want to waste a whole hell of a time on this. But I do need to tell you the story. So, let me go ahead and, let's see, go ahead and show you. So yesterday I'm on Facebook and there was this account called the U.S. Democratic Socialists. Okay, this is Bernie Sanders' thing. Obviously, they got the Bernie Sanders picture up there. But anyway, they were like, you don't even have to admit you're wrong. Just help us fix this mess before it's too late. That was their message. I went on and very simply said, except we aren't wrong. The mess is being fixed now. Well, yeah, that garnered me somewhere around 6,000 reactions and over close to like 1,500 comments. And the best that I can tell is that actually opened up the floodgates, because now I've got every single freaking leftist lunatic moron running around trying to goad me into a fight and all this other stuff, saying all kinds of nasty things. This is over on Facebook, of course. So saying all kinds of nasty things, trying to post like multiple memes. I'm just going to, real quick message to all of you people, all of you morons, not my Whiskey Warrior P1s. You guys can just shut your ears on this one. But all you morons that are trying to like goad me into a fight, I'm not going to get into a fight because you're not worth my time. In fact, you're not really worth anybody's time, to be honest with you. You know, being a sycophantic, Kool-Aid drinking moron is not worth anybody's attempt to try and dissuade you from your brainwashed, cult-like behavior. You guys are the Star Trek board. You all think the same. And there's a reason for that, because you don't have any kind of, you know, free thinking, intelligent, two brain cells to rub together kinds of thoughts. That is completely evidenced across the board to all of you, because every single one of you, I mean, you don't even have any kind of articulate arguments to even bring to the table. The first thing that you go to is calling names and all these other things. So, you know what? Honestly, I don't have time. And especially to all of those moron, lunatic, sycophantic idiots that sit there and try to spam me with a bunch of memes. Yeah, you hit me 3 times with a spam, you're out of there. I'm banning you from the page. So just forget it. Okay? So there you go. And that's it. And no, actually, TJ Evans, I was not looking for a fight. I was simply telling the truth, which is what I do on this program. And that's all there is to it. But anyway, so that, of course, has made it to where everything is, they just, I don't know what happened, but they just lit everything up. They started lighting everything up. So whatever. I mean, I don't care. It really doesn't matter to me because, again, they don't have any relevance within my particular sphere. So there you go. All right. Whatever. All right. Let's go ahead and get the show started. Anyway. All right. So first things first, obviously, is the Pledge of Allegiance. And for that, we have the NJY girl camps. NJY Camps Girls or Girls Camps. God, I can never remember this one. It's the NJY Girls Camps Band, I think. And there you go. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. If you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me, and place your hand over your heart and follow along with the NJY Girls Camp Youth Band or Girls Camp Band. Like I said, I can never remember. I should really do that. But anyway, as they recite their version of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah!
And of course, I thank you for that rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style, whether that's an audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and then take that file, attach it to an email address, or attach it to an email, and then send it off to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I, of course, will get you into the rotation. All right, tonight's headline sponsor is... Oh, wait. Before I get to the headline sponsor, I got to tell you what I'm drinking tonight. Tonight is the Four Roses Single Barrel Bourbon. Yeah, fantastic, wonderful taste. And just because I am drinking it out of the That's What I Do, I drink and I know things glass, with, of course, the requisite stones in the bottom. And so there you go. All right. Yes. Okay, now we can move on to tonight's headline sponsor, which is the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following three key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this wonderful product. It's got an 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. And no cheap glue binding here, folks. This is stitched all the way through the leather in the pages. It's got sexy rounded corners, according to my rumblers. It has a 100-year warranty against materials and manufacturing defects, such that if something does go wrong, you can either send it, or you can send it back to the manufacturer, or they will either fix it or replace it for free. Yes, it is Democrat repellent, because they hate this thing. That is true. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information contained within will help you study for your civics badge in Scouts. It will also help you for your civics badge or civics test in school, if you still have one, because obviously I don't think very many still do. Anyway, that's the point. So head on over to constitution.americanperspective.online. Get yours today. And also make sure that you check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings, as they have a wonderful amount of a plethora, let's say, of information that pertains to our founding. And I appreciate them for allowing me to be a brand affiliate. That's right. All right, folks, let's move on to our next segment, which, of course, is a fan favorite. And that is, of course, On This Day in American History. And for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T. E. Cribb. It is chock full of all kinds of little factoids and information about this fantastic country, which we call home. This one is a little apropos, considering we had Memorial Day not too long ago, but this is about the tomb of the unknown soldier. The night before us is that of a strong and good nation that stands in silence and remembers those who were loved and who, in return, loved their countrymen enough to die for them. President Ronald Reagan said on May 31st, 1982, after laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in an annual Memorial Day ceremony. The tomb of the unknown soldier stands on a hill overlooking Washington, D.C., in Arlington National Cemetery. One of the most solemn monuments in our country, it honors all of the U.S. soldiers whose remains have never been identified. Beneath the 8-foot-tall white marble tomb lies the body of an unknown soldier from World War I, placed there in 1921. Inscribed on the tomb are the words, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier, known but to God." The tomb of unknown soldiers from World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War lie nearby. The remains of the Vietnam unknown were actually identified by DNA testing back in 1998, so they've been removed, and that tomb is now empty. Members of the 3rd U.S. Infantry guard the tomb of the unknown soldier 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And as we all know, through even the worst of weather. And that is today's On This Day in American History. Someday I will actually make it there to go see Arlington and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I'm sure it is a very solemn place, and it really chaps my hide when I see people disrespecting it. That is completely un-American to go there. Anyway. All right. Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to catch up a little bit on the chats. All right. So it looks like the month of June is going to be a slew of Supreme Court decisions. Oh my gosh. I mean, I told you when Donald Trump was elected, I told you that what was going to happen is this was going to be probably one of the most constitutional presidencies that we've had in modern history. And not only that, but knowing that the court cases that were going to come up, I knew that this was going to be a big 4 years, especially in the beginning, but a big 4 years for the Supreme Court and for the country in terms of the direction with which the Supreme Court ends up taking us. And this is why the Supreme Court justices were so important in the first Trump term, that he get the most constitutional that he could find. Unfortunately, I think he failed in a couple. But he, I mean, yeah, anyway, we're just going to have to deal with whatever the Supreme Court kicks back out here really soon. But that being said, there are nine decisions to watch for in June. The first one that's on the top is the gender-affirming care for minors. So in December of 2024, the justices were called upon to enter the gender debate by hearing arguments over Tennessee's attempt to prevent gender-affirming care from being provided to minors. Now, of course, gender-affirming care is in quotes. Anyway, the case focused on the use of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers on kids rather than surgical procedures, but it raised constitutional questions common with both sets of procedures. So Tennessee argued that its law was needed to protect underage patients from what it considers to be risky, unproven medical interventions, which is true. They are risky. They are unproven. And, I mean, by the time that things get across the finish line here, most people, the majority of people who have gone through and undergone those kinds of procedures regret it on the other end. And it really doesn't do anything, by the way. Proponents argue about the fact that gender-affirming care prevents things like suicides and stuff like that, but the statistics do not prove that out. So, that being said, okay, the Supreme Court, during oral arguments, seemed inclined to uphold the Sixth Circuit Court's ruling, which the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals correctly ruled that the law itself was constitutional. So the Supreme Court did seem inclined, potentially, through, I mean, some people can kind of get a feeling for where the wind blows with the Supreme Court in terms of the questions that are being asked during oral arguments. But anyway, all right, the second one to watch, these are not necessarily in any kind of an order, by the way. It's just whatever, they're not in any kind of priority order here. But the second one is, of course, the nationwide injunctions based on birthright citizenship. Now, the interesting thing about this case is during the oral arguments, we'll call him the plaintiff in this place, the Solicitor General, basically said that, no, we're not asking for the court to decide today whether or not birthright citizenship and the executive order that called this into question is actually constitutional or not. We're not interested necessarily in that. We'd rather let that percolate up through the courts like it should. But we are concerned about these nationwide injunctions. Now, we've discussed this on the program, and I've told you that the way that this works is that the lower courts are created by Congress. Congress, therefore, cannot pass down any kind of power that it does not have. Congress does not have the power to block any kind of executive orders. Therefore, they can't go and pass that down to any lower courts. And the lower courts basically have their own separate jurisdictions that essentially are basically that's their fiefdom, and they can't get out of it. They can't stay out of, or they have to stay out of everything else. And so basically what ends up happening here is the Supreme Court justices looked at the three, because there's three of them, lower court orders that issued nationwide blocks on Trump's executive order, particularly for that. And they heard oral arguments on May 15th. It's unclear as to how the justices may rule because they seemed more inclined to address the lawfulness of the various court order as opposed to the legality of the Trump policy. But two of them, obviously Sotomayor and Kagan, the leftist side of the court, seemed to think the administration had misinterpreted the 14th Amendment and kept hammering on that, which, is, well, anyway, Clarence Thomas, of course, seemed the most sympathetic to the Trump administration's position because he actually has objected to lower court nationwide injunctions, and has suggested that they have no solid historical basis, which they don't. I did a whole segment on the historical basis and where the nationwide injunctions really came from and how they weren't even active during the FDR era, which they should have been put into place had they been constitutional, but they weren't, and they're not. And so the only court in the land that actually has the ability to block either Congress or the presidency is literally the Supreme Court. None of the lower courts have that power. And Congress, because Congress created the lower courts, they cannot confer that power down to the lower courts. Even they don't have it. But the Supreme Court does. And that's where the problem comes into play, or the issue at hand comes into play. Now, the third case to watch is sex and gender in school libraries. Parents sued the Montgomery County School Board in Maryland after it determined that parents could not opt their children out of book readings with controversial content about gender and sexuality. The policy mandated a new LGBTQ inclusive storybooks for the elementary school students that promote gender transition, pride parades, same-sex romance between young children. So the case involved parents, and by the way, this is parents for all kinds of religious backgrounds. It's not just like a Christian background or a Jewish background. No, it's even the Muslim background. They joined in on the case too. And basically their argument is that the district is violating the First Amendment by compelling their children's participation in instruction on gender and sexuality. Doing so interfered with their free exercise of religion by curbing parents' authority over classroom instruction, they said. Hundreds of parents showed up at board meetings while board members accused parents of promoting hate. Well, I mean, realistically, what this boils down to is an ideology, and it also boils down to, realistically, the protection of our students. I mean, if you want to have books within the school library, okay, but the books in the school library should be age appropriate. Having books with actually very pornographic depictions of what's going on within the wording of the book, that would be bad enough, but having, depictions of what's going on within the wording of the book, that would also have, challenges and everything else in terms of age appropriateness. I mean, if this is the case, why don't you just put things like, Playboy, Hustler, any other pornographic magazine into a elementary school library for that matter? But no, you can't do that. So what's the point in having these books put in there? Now, the interesting thing about this particular case is that the left, it keeps talking about how the books are banned. How the books are banned. They're not banned. Banning a book means that you can't get it anywhere. That's not true. You can buy the book, and if you want to read it to your child at home, okay, fine. That's totally within your realm of possibility. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but there you go. The point being, though, is that, again, this is not information that needs to be disseminated to children. It just isn't. And anybody with a halfway semblance of intelligence understands this. Anyway, another case that's there is Kennedy versus Braidwood Management. The Supreme Court is considering the constitutionality of the Federal Preventative Services Task Force, which was created under Obamacare law, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and makes binding recommendations about preventative medical services. Members of the task force are appointed by the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, but the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit said that doing that violates the Constitution's Appointments Clause, which provides the president may appoint officers to assist him in carrying out his responsibilities. Such officers must be appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. Now, we've had conversations about that particular piece because of the fact that those are primary officers. So are they? So basically, the question I think on this one is going to be is whether or not this preventative care panel is actually a primary cabinet appointment or whether it's a lower cabinet appointment, something below all of that, which it sounds like it is because it's, appointed by the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, which should go through the confirmation hearing. So anyway, during the oral argument, the justices seemed a little skeptical of arguments by Braidwood Management, which is a Texas-based company that objected on religious grounds to providing HIV prevention medicine and sexually transmitted disease screenings. So the task force had required that employers cover such medicine and services for an employees. Justice Kavanaugh said that the company's argument assumed the task force was massively important, even though Congress hadn't clarified that was the case. Sotomayor seemed to downplay the importance of the task force members, likening them to the law clerks who help the justices on some of the things we don't know anything about. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, all right. Another case is age verification for pornography websites. This one, the U.S. Circuit Court or the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit upheld a law in Texas that essentially required mandating online age verification for the digital adult industry. And the Fifth Circuit Court upheld the law, stating that it didn't violate the First Amendment. An adult entertainment industry group called the Free Speech Coalition asked the Supreme Court to intervene. They argued in January's hearing that the appeals court should have applied a stricter standard, a legal test known as heightened scrutiny, when assessing whether the law accorded with the First Amendment. Again, this is one of those questions, whether or not, A, is it your First Amendment right to have it, or is this more of a, we're trying to limit certain age restrictions. This is where this falls into. This is kind of the same. This falls into, in my mind, in the same particular sense as the books within school libraries kind of scenario. Let's see. So the next one is Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. Now, you all know my stance when it comes to medical care being given out by the federal government. The federal government does not have a constitutional mandate for providing health care. It's not there within Article 1, Section 8, and therefore it falls to the 10th Amendment. And so this should actually be more of a state's issue, regardless of whether it's Planned Parenthood, Medicaid, Medicare, all of that stuff should not be done, or even the ACA, all of that stuff should not be done at the federal level. But what is at issue under this case is whether or not the Federal Medicaid Act created a right for low-income Americans to choose their providers. The original lawsuit was brought by a Medicaid client who wanted to use Planned Parenthood services. Now, if the Supreme Court finds for South Carolina, the ruling could encourage states to eject the organization from their Medicaid networks, according to Planned Parenthood. Now, this case goes all the way back to 2018 when South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster signed a pro-life executive order directing state health officials to deem abortion clinics unqualified to provide family planning services. It also required officials to terminate such clinics' enrollment agreements and deny their enrollment applications in the future. Again, this falls back to, the states' rights things. I mean, this is more of a, hey, the states have got to do this. All right. And the last one here, which is also kind of interesting, the U.S. gun manufacturers have asked the Supreme Court to quash a lawsuit that has been brought by the Mexican government, which alleges that U.S. companies were liable for guns being used in violence committed by criminal cartels in Mexico. I'm just going to put this out there. If somebody kills you with a hatchet, do you blame the hatchet maker? No. You blame the person holding the hatchet. There's your answer. So, yeah, they should throw it out. Now, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit allowed the lawsuit to proceed. The Supreme Court seemed skeptical during oral arguments of that, that Mexico had shown that the companies were liable under the Federal Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, which generally protects firearm companies from lawsuits based on criminals misusing their products. Exactly. Okay? That's it. I mean, that really is it. Do you blame the car when a drunk driver kills somebody? No, you don't. Do you blame the, again, like I said, the hatchet or the shovel or whatever other kind of blunt instrument? No, you blame the person holding it. This is ridiculous, and I personally think this has gone far enough. Now, if the gun had exploded in an individual's hands because of some kind of failure on the part of the gun manufacturer to make it properly, to send it to them in working order, then yeah, I would agree. They should be held liable. But yeah, if you want to sit here and say that gun companies can be held liable for the things that their purchasers actually do with them, you've got a hell of a lot more. You're opening up a Pandora's box there. That's all I'm saying, because anything can become a weapon, and you could sue the crap out of any other company who honestly sold the item, whatever the item is, without the specific intent of that being used in a nefarious crime. So yeah, this should be, in my opinion, that should be thrown out. There's also two consolidated cases here as well that for where the Supreme Court justices considered whether the families of terror attack victims could sue the Palestinian Liberation Organization terrorist group. Now this, yes, absolutely, because if they weren't part of this terrorist group, they wouldn't have committed their crimes or their terrorist stuff. So yeah, this definitely, this definitely is one of those cases where, yeah, they should uphold this. Now, when the case reached the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, one of the two, because there's actually two of them, one of the two lost because the judges said the law violated due process protections. Now, during oral arguments, Clarence Thomas questioned the PLO attorney's contention that the terror group and the Palestinian Authority are persons, given actual status by the 5th and 14th Amendments, which would grant the organization's due process rights. Kavanaugh said that the court shouldn't interfere with the lawsuit, and I agree, they shouldn't. They shouldn't interfere with the lawsuit. Finally, the last one is nuclear waste storage. Texas objected to the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission's attempt to license private storage providers to operate an interim storage facility in what's called the Permian Basin, which is the nation's most productive oil field. Oh, yeah, two combustibles. The state said that the proposed location could jeopardize the oil field. Yes, it could. So Texas sued. The Supreme Court took it up after the state of Texas won the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. Judges said that the Federal Atomic Energy Act does not authorize the commission to give a private business a license for an interim storage facility. And so, yeah, that's all right. So anyway, there you go. During the oral arguments in March, Justice Neil Gorsuch questioned the decision to locate the facility on a concrete platform where we get our oil and gas from. Also crucial was Justice Alito, who said that granting long-lasting licenses for interim storage facilities undermines the wishes of Congress. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But those are the 9 cases that are coming up that have not been decided yet, that will probably be decided in June. All right. Well, before I move on to the next one, let's go ahead and hit a Let's go ahead and hit a 1775 coffee. Hey, I'm telling you, I start my day with coffee. I know most people do. You know, the caffeine, the flavor, the smell, it all gets my body up and running and moving, and especially for as early as I get up. Well, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, now is your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, and there's a limited number of units available. You're getting a bold dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check, a smooth medium roast, and the Vitality Mushroom Coffee for clean energy and laser focus with no crash. All are single origin and small batch, toxin free and mold free. Plus, you're also getting, and this to me, this is like my favorite part of the entire batch, the gold spoon clip, because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. You also get a frother that is strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's political opinions. You also will receive a black 1775 tumbler that says, "I don't take life advice or caffeine from a woke sea witch." $175 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been waiting and watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com / that's the question mark key for those of you that don't know, / studio, and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Go to 1775coffee / studio and grab your starter kit before they sell out. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Go to 1775coffee / studio and grab yours today to start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. All right. Oh, Becky. Becky over in Australia, of course, you know, Australia's got the big time difference. So over in Australia, she basically says that because of your show, Whiskey, I start my day with a whiskey. Well, she also works nights. So anyway, but all right, I'm good with that. Okay. So Jake Tapper is, he's kind of waking up. I got to be honest with you. Not that I really trust the guy, because let's face it, he's part of the cabal of mainstream media morons who covered up the whole Biden administration. There's a lot we could unpack there. However, Jake Tapper is starting to realize that, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm not on the correct side of this whole thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Oh, sorry, I don't need that. But I do need this once I can find it. There it is. All right, so let's go ahead and take a listen.
I went on a left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless, and we were talking about my kids, because I think they were both people without kids. And they asked me about my son, and I said he was, you know, he's a football player, and he wants to be a policeman. And their joke was about my 15-year-old son, oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman, therefore he's racist, my son. And like, you know, that was the big laugh. And then I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections.
100%.
Like my football playing son, who has no political views. He's 15. He thinks about World War II and gaming and playing linebacker. That's his world. You're deciding he's a racist because he wants to be a cop. And why does he want to be a cop? He wants to be a cop because he wants to help people, you know, and he thinks that's the best way he can help people. And that's how the Democratic Party talks to men, not just white men, but men. And I mean, I get the idea that they thought Tim Walz could, what's the term he used? Code switch or something? He thought that he could translate the Democratic Party values because he hunts and fishes and owns a gun and was in the army and drinks a beer. I mean, at least there was an attempt, but I find it just insane.
Wow. Jake Tapper, red pilled. Holy crap. Yes, Jake, that is your Democrat Party. And if you have any question on that, seriously, if you have any question on this, this fits so perfectly with what happened or what has been happening in the last 24 hours over on my Facebook page. This is exactly it. These people are lunatic nuts. They have no idea. They have nothing intelligent to bring to the conversation. So they have to devolve down into name calling and character attacks and personal attacks when they don't even know the individual that they're dealing with. So again, Jake, buddy, welcome to reality. As Bruce Willis's character, John McClane, says in the Die Hard movie, "Welcome to the party, pal." Yeah, that's exactly it. Today's Democrat Party are just a bunch of sycophantic leftist lunatic morons who just regurgitate whatever they're given, and, you know, that's what they do. And yeah, I know I'm probably going to get a whole bunch more hate over on my Facebook page, but whatever. Like I said in the beginning of the program, you matter not. Anyway. All right. So Jasmine Crockett, another leftist lunatic moron, was on a show, Fox 4. And, well, she kind of sort of maybe stepped in it a little bit. Well, I mean, let's face it, that's just her usual mode of operation. But she ended up stepping in it a little bit with regards to what's coming up next for the Democrats. Let's take a quick listen.
What is the Democrat playbook for the midterms? Is it blaming Trump, or is it talking about kitchen table issues?
You act like I got the playbook. Listen, I mean, the winning playbook, I think, overall is just communication and education. I think that you can talk about kitchen table issues all you want to, but it comes down to actually having a rapport and making sure that people actually understand what it is that you're talking about. I don't think that we failed to talk about kitchen table issues, but basically Trump was simple and lied, right? Like he said, hey, the price of eggs are high. I'm going to reduce it on day one. It was a very simple message. It was a lie.
We're going down now.
I mean, after they went.
Okay, so she just, he just went and like smacked her. You didn't catch that. He said, well, they're going down now. Yeah, egg prices are going down. In fact, they've gone down ever since the beginning of 2025. I mean, yeah, okay, whatever. Anyway, let's continue to listen to her. By the way, I want you to listen very carefully, because if you listen to the way she is speaking right now to the interviewer, who, for those who can't see this, who are listening on the audio portion of the program later, the interviewer is a very eloquent black man, and she has dropped her entire, I'm going to say this just because it is, ghetto-like image. She's dropped it so that she can have a conversation on par with the gentleman in front of her. So don't sit here and tell me that she isn't, first of all, that she is, that is her affect. It's not. She's using it as a crutch to try and gain a certain segment of the population to her side. That is not who she actually is. But anyway, I digress. Let's take a listen to the rest.
Went up through the roof.
Yeah.
I mean, like, let's be clear. And honestly, they may be down for the second, but again, having people be educated about what it is that the FDA does, and talking about things such as the bird flu, and talking about if you have less birds because they are sick, then that's less eggs, but the demand is still the same, then the price goes up. Like, we have to make sure we do education. One of the
okay, I'm going to stop it right there for just a second. The birds that she's talking about, you're right. If they are sick, sure, but the Biden administration was actually going through and culling complete herds of healthy birds. That all stopped toward the end of his administration. So anyway, moving on, I digress.
other issues that I think that we had is that people didn't understand that the global pandemic was the cause of our inflation. They were
no. The global pandemic was not cause of our inflation. What was the cause of our inflation was the Inflation Introducing Act. Yeah, it was that one in particular that that did it. Anyway, let's continue.
We're like, oh, everything's high. And they just say, well, that's the person that's in office, instead of actually having this global conversation. Or
No, sweetheart. Again, we hit 9.1% inflation 18 months into Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's presidency, or administration, I should say. Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
one of the things that he was honest about is that he actually was going to institute tariffs. The problem was people didn't understand exactly what a tariff was, because he was able.
I disagree with you on that one too, sweetheart, because tariffs were something that Trump did during the first administration, during his first term, and also Biden carried on many of his tariffs, especially the ones on China, and actually Biden even increased the ones on China during his administration. So don't sit here and tell me that people didn't know. They did.
Able to say, you know what? And it's going to be those foreign countries that pay for the tariffs. So everybody's like, all right, cool. Like, but that's not the case. And so I think that our win is in the education. I think it is why I place an emphasis on making sure that we can do things such as our teletown halls, why I place an emphasis on coming in and having an actual dialogue with my seniors, because I do want to make sure that they understand what's going on. And I want to break it down into the simplest terms that I can, because some of this can be really, really complicated. But I think our win is in our education and our constant communication.
Okay, so yeah, you want constant communication. Well, here you go. Here's constant communication. Take a look at this chart. This isn't even my chart. This is a chart. This is a chart of, again, right after 2025, you know, after he was elected president. Look at the blue line, and then all of a sudden, wham, the blue line just drops right off. Oh, check that out. And now here we are, and yeah, prices kind of stabilized a little bit, and then all of a sudden now they're starting to drop again. This is eggs, folks. This is eggs. They've declined 62% since President Trump's inauguration day on January 20th. Yeah, egg prices haven't come down from day one. Sure. Okay. Yeah. They're dropping rapidly. The economy itself is still on fire, even though the Trump tariffs are there. I mean, seriously, this is just, yeah, your communications team cannot keep up there, sweetheart. Also, hey, if you're really interested, here's a graphic. The S&P 500 had its best day since 1990 on, May 30th, which was yesterday. Look at all those greens in all of those spaces. Yeah. Sure. We're having all kinds of problems. Sorry there, sweetheart, but no, you are lost in your thought process. For sure. You know who else is lost in their thought process? California. Yep. California, some California Democrats are waking up to the realization that they got a problem. And here's the problem. They are railing, meaning getting mad, against the energy regulations that they're the ones that actually imposed. And they have a gas crisis coming soon. So California's Committee on Utilities and Energy grilled several state regulators on Wednesday about a possible gas price spike as two major oil refineries in California are preparing to close. This is according to the local news outlet KCRA. So Democrats, by the way, California Democrats in particular, have targeted the fossil fuel industry for years by creating stringent regulatory climates. Energy companies, including their refining capacity, are withdrawing from the state of California, setting the table for a potentially massive 75% jump in gas prices. Now, for those of you that don't know, California already has some of the highest gas prices in the country. Washington is pretty damn close, but a Democratic Assemblyman, Dave Alvarez of San Diego, said on Wednesday at the hearing, according to KCRA, quote, "We have a crisis on our hand that may have been self-created by the actions perhaps taken by the state and by regulators." Yeah. Democratic Assemblyman Cody Petrinoris told regulators at the hearing, I know what climate leadership does not look like, and that is not $10, or that is $10 gas. Yeah. Okay, you guys are starting to realize and get some red pills. This is actually a good thing. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Now, California, according to the piece here in the Daily Caller that I'm getting this information from, California has the highest average per gallon gas price at the pump compared to any other state, according to AAA gas price data. Meanwhile, California regulators have suggested increasing state involvement in refinery management, including the possibility of de facto state-owned refineries. Yeah, that'll fix it. Anyway, yeah, more regulations, more, state incompetence or government incompetence, I should say. Yeah, that's really going to be, that really. So Philip 66 and Valero both announced plans to close the refineries in that state in 2024. And the retiring facilities jointly account for roughly 20% of California's refining capacity, according to KCRA. So, yeah. And Alvarez asked a regulator, I think I also heard you say that another closure can lead to a significant increase in costs to consumers on the price of gas. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you overregulate and you drive the companies out of your state. Oh, my gosh. Maybe they're starting to realize this. Yeah. Let's see. What's this? So, a spokesperson, yeah. A Phillips 66 spokesperson told the Daily Caller News Foundation that the energy company wants to continue to be a trusted and deliberate partner with the state. We're also not exiting California, still owning and operating various assets that will serve California's commercial and customer demands, including the Rodeo Renewable Energy Complex. Okay. Yeah, we know how their shift to renewable energy has done for their grid system. Brownouts and blackouts all the time. Anyway. Well, another argument that has been going on, of course, with regards to stuff. Now, this is really getting into the meat of what I really wanted to talk about tonight, honestly. So, again, a lot of people are thinking that this attack on Harvard is an attack on free speech. It's an attack on, education. And as anyone who has listened to this program knows, education is not, and I'm going to say it again, is not a responsibility of the federal government according to the Constitution, because education does not show up, just like healthcare, just like food stamps, just like any of these other social programs. They don't show up in the Constitution as a constitutionally mandated responsibility of the federal government, and therefore the 10th Amendment applies. I've been pretty consistent on that. I've been pretty consistent on that whole thing. And so, there you go. But a lot of people have been discussing and talking about the idea that, everybody seems to be basically harping on or pounding on the university system. And that, no, the university system is not biased. The university system is not a leftist indoctrination program like what the right seems to want to say. Okay? Well, yeah. Harry Enton. He's a data guy, and I got to tell you, as a data guy, even though we know that he's going to be left-leaning, as a data guy, he definitely at least brings essentially the honest facts with regards to this. Let's take a listen to his newest foray into the whole idea of the leftist colleges.
I think going into this, I think a lot of Americans thought that higher ed needed a nice kick in the rear end. What am I talking about here? Well, why don't we take a look at high confidence in higher education? You go back a decade ago, 57% of Americans had high confidence in higher education. Look at where we are now. That number has plummeted plummeted as of last year down to 36%. We're talking about a 36-point drop among Republicans specifically. Get this, 68% of Americans said that higher education was on the wrong track. So it's a question of whether or not people agree with Trump's tactics, but they definitely agree with him on the idea that there is a problem with higher ed overall.
Yeah, there you go. A problem with higher ed overall. It's called they became indoctrination camps. They're not. It's in it for education. They turned over and decided to take down, or to embrace, I should say, the Marxist ideologies that have been flowing through our university system for literally decades. Berkeley was definitely the start of it, way back in the 60s. Okay? And so anyway, that being said, well, now you see some of the numbers. Well, let me get out of the way so that Harry can finish his thoughts.
Something you've heard from President Trump and many Republican allies for quite some time is accusing colleges and universities across the country of not being a friendly place for conservatives, if you will. How do the American public feel?
Yeah, so, do colleges have a liberal bias? I think that's really the question here. And what we see in polling after polling after polling is that the plurality say yes. Overall, look at that. 45% of Americans overall agree with the idea that colleges have a liberal bias. Just 24.
Oh, wait a minute. So it's not just the right. It's not just the right that is saying this. This is Americans overall. We'll just have to kind of see this.
4% disagree with that idea.
That's
Look among
24%
Republicans.
disagree.
Hello, 67% of Republicans agree that colleges have a liberal bias. This is why Donald Trump is so emphatic and so wanting to take on this fight, because he knows that Republicans hate universities, hate the administrations, believe they have a liberal bias, and in fact, the plurality of Americans overall agree with the idea, agree with Donald Trump, that colleges are in fact a place where bias reigns.
There you go. So it's not just me, people. It's not just me who think that. That is Americans overall. 45% agree and only 24 disagreed, which basically means that, let's see, that's 69. So that leaves us with 31% didn't either agree or disagree, have no opinion on it, or whatever. Folks, for all of you leftist sycophants who sit there and throw and flaunt your college degrees and say that your college degree is a education and it shows, it demonstrates your intelligence, no, it does not. What it demonstrates is that you are able to, for 4 years at a minimum of your life, you are able to toe the line, answer the questions, regurgitate the information that has been spoon-fed to you, and not question authority. That's essentially what it says. Now, not all universities and not all university programs are necessarily that way. In fact, and I believe I've shown this graphic before. I wish I could pull it up right now that I think of it. But most of the science, technology, engineering, and math, known as the STEM, STEM categories, are essentially predominantly Republican. It's all of the other categories, the liberal arts, the gender studies, the basket weaving, whatever other kind of program that's out there that is turning the tables on these kids and are providing them with the leftist bias that is being presented. And so, yeah. And not only on top of that, but you're also at a point where you're putting in like $60,000 at a minimum to go learn something that really has very little relevance in the outside world. And you're walking out with a $60,000 a year. So that means 60,000 times 4, 6 times 4, that's $240,000, not including any kind of taxes or any other things. But you're in debt $250,000 coming out, and you don't have a degree that's going to help you to pay that money back. This is the total game, let's call it, You could call it a scam. It could also be called the scam in the university section. And you're sitting there and you're coming out with this idea that, oh, yeah, I have a bachelor's. I am smarter than the average person. You're not. You're not. I'm just telling you that right now. Now, for those of you who sit there and look at me and say, oh, well, that's just what an uneducated person would say. I have a bachelor's degree, folks. I went back to college. I worked for it and I went back. And I did get my degree. Has it helped me in any way? Not noticeably. But then again, I'm also in a field, and I'm not talking about this, but I'm also in a field where college degrees are not the norm. Certificate-based technical colleges are the norm. And that's different than your standard university, four-year university system. Now, this is what I have been talking about, and I even had an episode way back when, even before I actually had any kind of a following, where I discussed about the importance of the blue-collar worker. That going to trade schools is much more important than heading off to a four-year college and getting you some sort of a degree that isn't really going to be relevant in the real world. And you know what? I'm not the only one that thinks that way. In fact, Mike Rowe, who is part of Dirty Jobs, he has been an advocate for the American worker. The ones that work with their hands and make this country run. And I even got into a small discussion with a gentleman, shall remain nameless, on Facebook that basically when I posted, hey, that money that we're taking from Harvard should go to trade schools. And they should be given that money to help bolster them because they actually do something. And the response that I got was, hey, our college degreed people, you know, we're so much better, blah, blah, blah. I'm paraphrasing here. Please don't quote me on this, but I'm paraphrasing. But basically the idea was, well, the college degrees are, you know, much more educated and so on and so forth. And I said, yeah, except there's only one problem. When you have a problem with your car, when you have a problem with your electrical or your plumbing, or you need a house built, or, you know, any number of other skilled trades that four-year educated or, you know, God forbid, all the way up to the PhD, all they're doing is calling for help because they can't get anything done. They don't understand those systems, HVAC systems, so on and so forth. They don't even understand any of those systems. They wouldn't even be able to think about how to fix any of those systems. And yet here they are with their PhD in, education. Yeah, I'm going to pick on Jill Biden for this. And what is she going to do? She's going to hire somebody to come out and fix their important things that they need for their life. Okay? And so sitting here and looking down on people who work with their hands, and by the way, let's be real about this. You take off and go to a trade school. You get paid training more often than not because these trade schools work with the companies that look for people to get hired. There is a shortage of individuals who are doing this. And so what happens is these companies, they go to these trade schools and they say, hey, give us your best and your brightest. We already know you guys are getting trained, and they'll even get to the point where they'll pay for your training. And so what happens? Who's the smarter? Let me just ask this. Who is the more intelligent? The person who's gone to a four-year college to get a degree, walks out with $250,000 in debt, or the person who goes off to a trade school only spends about 2, maybe 3 years in that trade school, has zero debt, and can walk out into a almost six-figure income the minute they walk out the door? If you ask me, hey, I think that the blue-collar worker guy was a lot smarter. He or she, well, I can't discount the women in those trades, but we can't even, we can't even discount. I mean, we can't sit here and say that that person wasn't smart. Yes, they are not going to make the same amount of money because we've overvalued a university degree realistically in our society. And yes, they do make more money. But when you go further beyond that, I know people who just paid cash for everything in their life. And they walked away with a huge amount of cash when they died. They were I know of at least one or two people that were farmers, people. They worked from sun up till sundown every day of their life. They walked around and they had cash all the time. In fact, there was one farmer and a anecdotal story that I know about where this farmer walked into a dealership, was totally shunned by all of the moron salespeople except for one. That one salesperson walked up, treated the farmer as though he were a actual human being, and ended up getting a cash sale that day for a $150,000 car. Now, this is back in the 80s. So just imagine what that car would actually be worth today. But he handed over $150,000 in $100 bills and walked out of that dealership with a car, and none of the other salespeople were able to take advantage of that because they looked down on the man because he walked in with dirty hands and a set of overalls. Yeah. Anyway, Mike Rowe says to give Harvard billions to America's working class. Take a listen.
Hey, Harvard. Checkmate. The out-of-touch Ivy big leaguer began the weekend by suing the Trump administration for its block on international enrollment. And the Trump administration ended the week by ending it all, moving for federal agencies to eliminate any remaining funding going to that university, which comes out to be about $100 million bucks.
The highest level since 2018. Students studying constructions, trades rose 23%, while those in HVAC and vehicle maintenance programs increased 7%. Joining us now is the CEO of Mike Rowe Works Foundation, Mike Rowe. Mike, I know this is near and dear to your heart, but I just have to tell you something that I'm sure is not near and dear to your heart. This sort of stuff that Trump wants to move our taxpayer monies away from. The NIH, National Institutes of Health, gave Harvard millions of dollars for a health equity research program.
Okay, which is unconstitutional because the federal government doesn't need to be giving loans and grants. Just saying. Moving on.
The NSF, the National Science Foundation, gave grants on gender differences in digital learning. None of which I dare to guess, none of which is adding anything to our GDP, if not taking away from it. What could you do with that kind of money?
Oh, man. Look, it's a little early for a victory lap, but as you guys know, I've been beating this drum for 16 years. I went to Congress twice to talk about the need for better PR around the skilled trades. And for all the reasons you just mentioned, I think we have some green shoots, as they say. There's some things to feel pretty good about. But look, if I had to choose between should Harvard get $3 billion or should trade schools, in that world, obviously the trade schools. But I think there's a bigger issue, honestly. Trade schools are not so different than the elite universities in the sense that there's some great ones and some okay ones and some not so great ones. We need to means test these things. What we really need to do, like if I were king of the world with $3 billion, I would set up the biggest scholarship fund in the history of the country, specifically for the skilled trades. And I would build an infrastructure that would allow people to apply, but then be weighed and measured in a way that the taxpayer felt good about, if we're going to give these kids a full ride to learn how to weld or how to be a plumber, let's make sure they really want to work. And then I would spend.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop. Hold the presses. Is that a merit-based system? Holy crap. Mike, you're not speaking English or American. No, actually he is. I mean, that's the whole point of our entire freaking country is it's a merit-based system. It has nothing to do with skin color or anything else other than aptitude and physical ability and so on and so forth. Really. Anyway, let me finish. Let Mike finish.
Spend some of that money making a persuasive case for the jobs that actually exist. The problem, in my view, right now, isn't too few Harvard grads. It's a lack of enthusiasm for the trade schools. I'm sure they'd welcome the money, but what exactly would they do with it to change the stigmas and stereotypes that have kept a whole generation of kids from exploring these careers? That's what has to change if we want to close the skills gap and address the will gap.
Mike,
So basically, what we need to do is we need to start focusing on the skill sets that actually matter, that actually run life, that actually do the things in this world that need done. I mean, this whole thing about going after Harvard as a free speech thing, no. I mean, yes, okay, you can argue it's a little bit of a free speech argument, not really, but go ahead. The point is, though, that Harvard is sitting on a $50+ billion endowment, and the Constitution does not set out any kind of educational whatsoever within its boundaries. The federal government has no business sticking their nose in that. They don't have a federally mandated responsibility for that, according to the Constitution. So it's time to move on. Realize that this stuff is not part of what our government should be doing, a federal government. Now, if you want to be a state government to do that, sure, go ahead. But hey, I'm just going to point something out to you. I have an old high school friend of mine. He was a shop teacher, and he performed welding classes. He had his students, because of the program that he built, he had his students, some of his best and brightest, walking out of high school, getting jobs that were $75,000 to start. $75,000 a year to start as an 18-year-old. An 18-year-old. Seriously? I mean, come on, people. We have got to resynchronize our thinking. Now, again, don't get me wrong. A university degree, especially in something like science, math, technology, those kinds of things are going to be valuable. But to sit here and make the case that, hey, you can walk into a degree, come out with a liberal arts degree, and you're going to be making six figures the minute you walk out the door of that university. No, you're not. Liberal arts is basically the equivalent today is what a high school diploma or a GED was about 60 years ago. I mean, that's literally what it is. Unless you're doing something in some sort of a specialized field, you're not going to get anywhere. Sorry, my headlight went off, so I'm a little darker now. Anyway, all right. Let's see, 15 minutes. Really quick, I know Buddy gave me a question, and I know what the question is, and I meant to get this up, so let me just do something real quick here. There we go. Okay, so now I've got it, and I have it ready. All right, let's move to the next item. So, U.S. inflation is actually cooling right now. It's going down slow, but it is going down, and for the first time, we actually have we actually have your income is actually now starting to overtake overtake inflation. So a key measure of the U.S. inflation slowed last month as consumer prices rose only 2.1% in April compared to the same time last year, according to the Commerce Department. This marks a decline of March's figure of 2.3%, so it dropped by 0.2. and represents the lowest rate since September. Core prices, which exclude food and energy categories, even though gas is going down as well, core prices increased a 2.5% year over year, down slightly from 2.6% in March. So pretty much what's happening right now is inflation is slowing down from that big, massive increase that we had during the first part of the Biden administration, and it is starting to slow down. And data is indicating that there is potentially going to be a continued decline in inflation from its post-pandemic peak back in July of 2022, which is when it reached its highest level in 4 decades. So, yeah, stuff is coming down, folks. It is coming down. And by the way, too, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the cuts that were done during Trump 1.0 have actually allowed IRS in 2024 to show revenues that have exceeded $5 trillion for the first time in history, and that the revenues have actually been increasing over this time. It's an increase of almost 9% compared to the prior fiscal year total of $4.7 trillion, the IRS said. Now, there's a reason why this is happening, people. It has been shown, history has shown us, when you cut taxes and cut regulation, you open up the engine that is the American system, that is the capitalist system. You open up that engine. And this is why I'm sitting here saying, yes, the tariffs, they kind of came on. They've been back and forth. There is some instability in that entire scenario. But the fact of the matter is that underlying all of that, the economy is still fairly strong. We have 4.2% unemployment. And granted, that's not necessarily good, but it's generally thought to be full employment levels. And so again, you're dealing with this idea that the left seems to think that the economy is not going very well. It's doing just fine, regardless at this point, regardless of what kinds of stuff you have, all the left is talking about. So this entire situation where they're talking about all of this stuff, I mean, it's absolutely asinine and ridiculous to even think that what Trump is attempting to do right now, which, by the way, the tariff, the amount of a trade deficit has actually been its lowest peak this last month, was at its lowest. Now, you could argue that's because we didn't have as many imports as we did exports, because that can affect the trade deficits as well. But the tariffs, I mean, they're showing some positive signs, people. And yet, when you sit there and talk to the sycophantic leftist mainstream media, they're not even talking about the truth of the matter and what's going on out there. Now, I do want to point out that we do have a looming election in 2026. And regardless of how the economy goes, regardless of how the immigration status goes, regardless of the fact that the majority of Americans are looking at the, things that Trump is doing with like Harvard and stuff, we have a bit of a problem. And the problem basically boils down to this. Most people do not vote on off years. They just don't, because it's not a presidential election year. For whatever reason, they seem to feel, meaning the American public seems to feel, that this is not an important election, that the midterm elections really don't have a lot of stuff to deal with. Well, that's a problem, because especially when you're dealing with a base of Democrat sycophantic leftists who are just itching to get back at Trump and their loss in 2024. We need to make sure that we get out the vote in 2026, and we've got to start talking to people about it now. Folks, if you like what Trump is doing, whether you like the man or not, it's the policy, not the person, that you need to focus on. It's the policies, not the individuals. Individuals come and go. It's the policies that are going to make this country great again. And you need to focus on the policies. It's those policies that are going to carry further and further after Trump has left office. But we need to make sure that he has the ability and can work with Congress, and that Congress, the Republicans in Congress, the ones that are actually attempting to make a difference, they have the ability to get the things done that need to get done. Now, I'm not that happy necessarily 100% with the big, beautiful bill. There's a lot of stuff in it that really shouldn't be. And unfortunately, the Republicans, because of their thin majority, are not willing to go after the things that I think need to happen, like all of the social programs that are unconstitutional, that are causing our deficit to increase exponentially and are going to go insolvent in 2030 or 2032, whatever, somewhere in that range. The lawmakers keep kicking the can down the road, and I get frustrated over all of that because of the fact that it has to happen. We need to have things change. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty, but it has to happen because otherwise our government is basically writing checks that it can't cash. So one of the problems, or one of the challenges that we have in 2026 is that a key pro-Trump demographic is not that motivated to come out for the GOP. Newly released analysis from JL Partners highlights concerns for the Republicans. For the Republicans, I lost my place. Anyway, for the Republicans ahead of the midterm elections, as a critical group of mid-propensity voters who supported Donald Trump in 2024 appear less motivated to vote in 2026. We need to get these people out. The analysis defines mid-propensity voters as voters who supported Trump but rank their likelihood of voting in midterms elections between 4 and 7 out of 10. These voters, who comprise 20% of the electorate, are predominantly younger aged, 18 to 29, and disproportionately black voters. That's the demographic. Despite their support for Trump in 2024, many of them are not politically aligned at all. Like I said, I'm not necessarily Republican. I'm a constitutionalist, strict constitutionalist. But beyond that, 42% of these people are identifying as independent or unaffiliated. We need to get these people out. We need to get these people out to the vote in 2026. We have got to give Donald Trump and the Republican Congress more support than ever. Yes, we won in 2024, and that was great. But we need to keep going. We need to keep going. We need to keep heading that way. Okay? That's what needs to happen. And everybody is going to have to jump in and try to do what they can to get people out to the polls. All right, before I head off to our final segment of the evening, which is the question of the week, I need to give props and a hat tip off to Sabo OH. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for all of that. Sabo OH has gifted me with a $40 Rumble rant saying that I missed the bar background, but loving the truth bombs. Well, don't miss the bar background too long. I've actually been considering bringing it back because, to be honest with you, I'm getting a little bored with just being in front of a black background like this. So the bar backgrounds may come back. I got to see what they do with the logo, whether or not the logo is actually visible enough in the bar backgrounds, and I will we'll see. But yeah, Buddy kind of mentioned it as well, so I know that a lot of people are like, hey, we like it when you rotate the backgrounds more. So all right, I gotta be there. So there you go. I got to do it. I got to do what you guys want. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. All right, folks. Last thing, of course, is tonight's question of the week. And I don't know why I keep having to look for this one, because it's a Q is the hit. Oh, Palms. Thank you so much. Oops. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. Palm says, Rick would be good as a radio host. Nice voice over the air or for the air. I thank you for that. And that would be fantastic, which, by the way, I am getting prepared. I'm trying to get my ducks in a row for hosting a music show over on Dallas Moore Outlaw Radio called Bourbon and Backroads. And so that is slated to start soon, and we're looking at Friday, but I got to get my ducks in a row first. Anyway, all right, let's get on to question of the week. And tonight's question of the week comes in from the venerable, the wise Buddy Weiser. And Buddy Weiser asks a very simple question. What is the lost colony? Well, that's a very simple question. Anyway, it was very, very simple. A very simple question, but it is a very deep answer. So the lost colony, generally speaking here in America, refers to an English settlement that settled on Roanoke Island in present-day North Carolina. Now, the colony somehow disappeared, and they're not even really sure how, but somehow disappeared between 1587 and 1590. The colony itself was founded by approximately 115 men, women, and boys under the leadership of an artist by the name of John White. Now, John White left for England to go get more supplies for the colony. And he returned in 1590 to find not a single trace of the colonists. Now, there's only one suggestion for the colony as to where the colony might have left. When White came back, he found the word Croatoan, and that's Croatoan, Croatoan carved into a post, and the letters CRO was carved into another nearby tree. Now, he took that as a sign that the colony had actually left and moved to a nearby island known as Croatoan, which was home of Chief Manteo's people south of the Roanoke on the Outer Banks. Now, that was a Native American settlement that was nearby, okay? Now, since then, many various theories have emerged about the fate of the colonists, including whether or not they were killed by the Native Americans or possibly even the Spanish coming around, whether or not they died from natural causes, maybe from hurricanes, disease, starvation, nobody really knows. Nobody really knows. And despite extensive research and archaeological digs, the exact fate of the lost colony still remains a mystery. Now, the story of the lost colony is reenacted annually in an outdoor drama called The Lost Colony at the Waterside Theater in Manteo, North Carolina. And that's been running since approximately 1937. So there you go. That's what the Lost Colony refers to here in America. It is the Lost Colony of Roanoke. We actually had a couple of those. Back then, you got to understand, it took, 6, 8, sometimes even 12 months to cross the Atlantic and come back. Seriously. So there you go. Anyway. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, go on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free, and make sure that when you do and are signed up and signed in, go into and search for the American Perspective channel on Rumble and make sure you hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you really want. Whatever. And make sure you do that across all of my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, and of course the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your weekend. And like I said, we'll see you on Monday. Good night, everybody.